Black Hollow isn't much more than a pinprick on the map. A quiet town nestled in the woods of North Carolina. The kind of place where everyone knows your name and outsiders pass through without a second glance. I took the job as sheriff here 5 years ago, thinking I'd left the real horrors of police work behind me. Turns out, I was wrong. The call came in just after midnight. Dispatch crackled to life with Marcy's voice, edged with something I didn't like. "Sheriff Walker, you might want to head out to Black Hollow Trail. Got a situation." "What kind of situation?" I asked, already reaching for my belt. "Missing hiker. Except, he ain't missing anymore." I didn't like the sound of that. 15 minutes later, my headlights cut through the darkness as I pulled onto the gravel road leading to the trailhead. The woods swallowed most of the moonlight, their looming branches reaching out like skeletal fingers, their gnarled silhouettes writhing against the night sky. Then I saw him, a man, barefoot and disheveled, standing in the middle of the road. His clothes were torn, his skin streaked with dirt and dried blood, but it was his eyes that sent a shiver up my spine, wild, darting, filled with a horror so deep it made my stomach knot. I stepped out of the cruiser, keeping my hand near my holster. "Sir, are you all right?" The man flinched. His breath came in ragged gasps. "They're still out there," he whispered. "You have to stop them." "Who?" I asked, stepping closer. His body seized up, his fingers twitching as if something unseen crawled beneath his skin. A strangled sound escaped his lips. "They don't want to be found." Then he collapsed. I knelt beside him, checking his pulse. Faint but there. I grabbed my radio. "Marcy, call EMS. I got a man down." I didn't know it then, but that was the night everything changed. The next morning, I visited the hospital. The man, identified as Daniel Mercer, was still unconscious. According to his driver's license, he was from Charlotte, nearly 3 hours away. What was he doing out here alone? I needed answers, so I drove back to Black Hollow Trail. The woods were eerily silent, the kind of quiet that sets your teeth on edge. The air felt heavy, like a storm was brewing just beneath the surface of reality. I found Daniel's abandoned campsite about a mile in. His tent was slashed open, fabric hanging in jagged ribbons. His backpack lay nearby, contents scattered like he'd fled in terror. But what made my stomach drop was the blood. Not a lot, just enough to paint the ground in dark, rust-colored streaks. Then I saw the footprints. Daniel's bare feet had left tracks leading back toward the road. But there were others, larger, heavier, and they didn't belong to boots or sneakers. Bare feet, bigger than any humans should be. Impossibly wide, with elongated toes that curled at the ends, like something had been gripping the earth. I followed them until they vanished at the tree line, as if whatever made them had simply dissolved into the shadows. A branch snapped behind me. I spun, gun drawn, my pulse a war drum in my ears, but there was nothing. Just the trees, watching, waiting. Back at the station, I dug into the records. Turns out, Daniel wasn't the first to go missing in those woods. Over the past decade, at least 6 hikers had vanished. Most were written off as accidents, lost to the wilderness. But I knew better. Something was out there. I decided to visit Daniel again, hoping he'd regained consciousness. This time, I wasn't alone. Deputy Harper, a former Marine who didn't scare easy, came with me. When we arrived, Daniel was awake, his face pale against the hospital sheets. His hands trembled as he clutched the blanket. "What happened out there, Daniel?" I asked. His eyes darted to the window, as if afraid something might be watching. "You wouldn't believe me. Try me." His throat bobbed as he swallowed hard. "They aren't human." Harper and I exchanged a glance. "Who?" "The things in the woods." His voice was barely a whisper. "They look human at first. But they're not. They move too fast, eyes too dark. And their mouths." He shuddered, gripping the blanket until his knuckles turned white. I saw them take my friend. Pulled him right into the trees. He didn't even have time to scream. I felt the hairs on my arms rise. Where? Daniel's eyes locked onto mine. Deep in the woods. Where the trees grow too close. And the air turns wrong. I exhaled slowly. We'll find them. His laugh was hollow. No, you won't. That night, Harper and I geared up and headed back into the woods. We carried rifles, flashlights, and radios. I told Marcy to check in every hour. If we didn't respond, she was to send backup. We followed Daniel's trail deeper into Black Hollow than I'd ever been. The deeper we went, the more unnatural the forest felt. The trees loomed like skeletal sentinels, their twisted trunks resembling gaping mouths frozen in sill.